Today we're going to talk about two special kinds of tides. You should already have learned that tides are related to the moon phases by reading the information in section 27.3. Today we're going to talk about spring tides and neap tides. You will need 3 colored pencils, an orange, a blue, and a yellow, and this notes page, which is found on the front of your eclipses notes. Let's talk about the first kind of tide. If you look at these pictures, you can see, and this is greatly exaggerated, that this is supposed to represent the water or the tides for this particular configuration of the moon, the sun, and the earth. And the directions say use a blue crayon or a blue colored pencil, fill in the tides for each picture. So we'll select our blue color, and you should be coloring in your blue tides. Next, name the moon phase for each one. There's a little bit of a hint here because they have filled in the circle of the moon, but we should know that if the sun is on one side and the moon is in the middle, if we are standing on Earth, right here, we would not be able to see the lit side of the moon. The lit side of the moon would be facing away from us. It would be on the sun side. So from Earth, when we were looking at the moon, we would not see any of the lit side here. It would be all dark. And if it's all dark, then that is new moon. Take your other colored pencils, and we're just going to fill in the orange on the sun here. I'm using red since I don't have orange on the smartboard, just to make our notes look a little bit prettier. And now we have to decide, is this a spring tide or a neap tide? You should know from your lesson 20 that a spring tide occurs where you have extra high highs and extra low lows. A neap tide occurs when tides are more even all the way around the earth. So is this a spring tide or a neap tide? Hopefully you agree that this is a spring tide. Let's do the same for the next picture. We're going to color our sun orange. Again, I'm using red. This time we actually have a moon to color. So the directions say color the moon yellow. Not very good at coloring inside the lines. And to color the tides blue. Hopefully your coloring is much neater than mine. And again, we have to name the phase that the moon is in for this particular configuration. This time the sun is on the opposite side of the moon with the earth in the middle. So if you were standing right here on the earth, looking at the moon, you would be able to see all of the lit side because the sun is over here, it's shining on the side that we would see from Earth. So if we see all of the lit side, then this is a full moon. And last, we have to decide, is this a spring tide or a neap tide? We should know that spring tides occur when you have really high highs and really low lows. Neap tides are more even all the way around. So again, hopefully you agree that this is a spring tide. Now, why do we get really high highs and really low lows? When the moon is in its new phase and its full phase, the moon's gravity and the sun's gravity work together. They are pulling kind of like in the same direction. And so that causes the tides to be really high in one spot and really low in another spot. Same thing with this picture. The moon and the sun's gravity works together. They pull kind of almost in the same direction or along the same line. And so that causes really high tides in some spots and really low tides in other spots. Pause here if you need to finish coloring. I will be erasing to move down. Okay, now we're looking at our bottom two pictures. Again, we're going to color the sun orange. or both pictures. We're going to color the tides blue. Not very good at coloring inside the lines. Hopefully yours are better. And we have to decide what part of the moon to shade yellow. So we have to decide what part of the moon is lit up. Well, if you look over here, this is where the sun is. Sun is shining on this side of the moon in this picture, and the same in this picture. Now, if you wanted to take a darker colored pencil or even just a regular pen, you could shade in the opposite side. That's the side that would be dark. And we have to decide what phases of the moon this is. Remember, you have to pretend that you are standing on Earth looking at the moon. So if you're standing right here on Earth looking at the moon, you would see half is lit up, so we know that that's a quarter, and the lit side is on the left as I view it from Earth. Light on the left is waning. Waning goes with third quarter. So this one is in third quarter. Okay, we do the same thing with the other picture, except now we imagine that we are standing on the other side of the moon. A little bit harder to draw this picture. If you're standing here looking at the moon, then you would see that the lighted side would be on the right hand side. Light on the right is waxing. Waxing goes with first quarter. Last thing, we have to decide if these are spring tides or neap tides. We should know that spring tides have high highs and low lows. Neap tides are more even all the way around. This would then be a neap tide because the tide is more even all the way around the Earth. Same thing for this picture. The tide is more even, so this is a neap tide. Why does that occur? Why do we have tides that are more even all the way around? Because in this picture, the sun's gravity and the moon's gravity are at right angles to each other. They're at 90 degrees, and that allows those two gravities to work against each other. And so because they pull kind of in different directions, you end up with a more even tide all the way around the Earth. Okay, that should do it for the notes today. You have a lesson packet to do for homework.